So let's apply this bullshit test to the philosophical idea of causation. And we begin with a quote from Hume on page 35. He says, "When I throw a piece of dry wood into a fire, my mind is immediately carried to conceive that it augments and not extinguishes the flame. This transition of thought from the cause to the effect proceeds not from reason. It derives its origin altogether from custom and experience." I like to use the example of throwing a brick through a window and causing the glass to shatter. So, throw a brick through a window, the glass shatters. We, in ordinary language, in ordinary life, say the brick caused the window to shatter. But what are our simple impressions? Well, on one hand, we have various takes of the brick's flight, like frames in a movie. And we have various snapshots of the glass shattering. Okay, that's what we actually get, says Hume. But what assumptions do we take to those discrete experiences? Well, first of all, resemblance. We assume that the brick was a continuing entity from one moment to the next. Now, given the results of the failure of the ontological argument and the radical solipsism that falls out of the cogito, this notion of resemblance or diachronic identity is spurious. Secondly, we bring the assumption of contiguity to the flight of the brick and the snapshots of the glass shattering. We assume that the assembled moments touched one another and that they preceded and followed one another in a linear fashion. How do we actually know that? And finally, we impute causation to the whole business, that the flight of the brick was linked to the fate of the glass, or better, the purported flight of the brick was linked to the purported shattering of the glass. Now, let's change the focus slightly and think about the self or the mind as an empty theater without walls, where a jumble of perceptions are randomly occurring. And that's the basic Humean notion of the mind. An empty theater where a jumble of perceptions are randomly occurring. Now, some of these perceptions are more forceful and vivacious than others, and we'll call these impressions. Others appear to be copies of impressions, and these we'll call ideas, and still others seem to appear when we compound, transpose, augment, or diminish other ideas, and we'll call these complex ideas. So now we have this booming, buzzing confusion of perceptions in a blank space which we're pleased to call our minds. And we assign a rough and ready order to this booming, buzzing confusion by imputing to it complex ideas of contiguity, resemblance, and causation. But remember, that imputed coherence is not in the external world, if there even is one. It's all in your head. if you've got one. And that's that. Okay, next what we're going to do is look at Hume's analysis of how propositions are known, the consequences of that analysis, and what we can reasonably expect to understand given that analysis. Then we'll conclude with some standard criticisms of Hume's approach. So stay tuned.